Well, turning to the courtroom now, where a man accused of sexually assaulting a child took the stand today in his own defense. Tonight, the jury is deliberating in the trial of a former Longview gymnastics coach and gym owner, Matthew Orban. KLTV7's Katie Parker has the latest now from the courtroom.
He says, "I'd like to deny it, but I can't just say I'm innocent." That's what he told the detective.
Matthew Orban awaits a verdict in day 2 of his trial for sexually assaulting a child. The state says a pattern of grooming led Orban to feel comfortable in his actions. Prosecutor Chris Botto says a letter written by Orban to his church days after the accusation comes across like a confession.
Through my lack of values and mindless acts, I did hurt those closest to me.
In Orban's letter, he claims a pornography and anime addiction overtook him.
And in those cartoons, it was full of rape and incest, which allowed me to dehumanize my victims, and it became a victimless crime.
Orban's defense says the letter is taken out of context.
The state's trying to twist his own admissions and self-reflections into something sinister.
Prosecutors say Orban assaulted his victim during massages while working as a gymnastics coach. Earlier today, Orban took the stand denying all claims.
At this point, I don't have a recollection of touching anything.
Katie Parker, KLTV 7 News.
Now he faces 2 to 20 years in prison. Katie is there and will have the very latest when we learn more about